Hello everybody, welcome to another video. Today we are going to be building this beautiful custom flower forest biome that you see here. So to get started, we're going to be using some voxel cylinders and marking out the shape of our pond that we want. Now for this landscape, I want it to be very whimsical. Lots of different shapes and curves and really lots of archways and craziness that we can tuck lots of flowers into. Just make it as magical as possible. Once we've got our cylinders in all of the places that we want them, we can begin with our voxel erode brushes and get those kind of smoothed out and get all of our curves in place that we're going to want. The entire time that I'm doing terrain, I'm really trying to think about what I'm going to be putting on this terrain so that I'm doing it correctly. It's very important that I don't have to do this terrain a million times over. I want to get it right and I want to think about where my buildings are going to go on it. Now we can think about color, which is equally as important. So I want to go for some really earthy tones here. Lots of earthy browns and some really rich greens on top of that. So I want to add all of these dark tones to really contrast all of the very colorful flowers and lighter buildings that I'm going to be putting on this. Really make sure you can see all of those curves very well. Then some grass goes along the top and we're adding in some more of these earthy tones in the form of mushroom blocks. Now for this build, you'll notice I really liked the mushroom blocks. Very fond of those. I realized here that my pond was not quite deep enough yet, so I fixed that up and added some color to it to add just a little bit more depth to that. Really bring some richness into the blue. I then initially mark out some shadowy areas in my cliffs, but I decided that this coloring actually makes it way too busy. So I color my pond, and then take out a lot of that color that I had done in the cliffs and just make them white. And I really like the way that those white mushroom blocks look in terrain. It just makes it so whimsical. Now for our focal point in the background here, we're going to be doing a waterfall. I really like the way this looks. It really draws your eye into the landscape. Now we are marking out some trees. So we are doing about 11 trees here, and each of these trees is going to be different and original. Now I mainly did this because I wanted to get a lot of practice in doing trees. Of course, doing trees is something that's fairly difficult to do, and unless you practice it, you're really not going to get a lot better. But I figured, what's the point of practicing if I'm not going to use the trees? So I built 11 different custom trees for this terrain, and it was a really good practice session for building trees for sure. I really like the way that each of them turned out, and doing them each differently allowed me to lean them all in different directions and do the branches in ways that really fit the terrain, as opposed to just doing a few off to the side and pasting them in. I definitely like this method a lot more if you've got a lot of time on your hands, like me. You can see a good example of that here, where I'm leaning this tree in to kind of curve around that waterfall that's in the back, and the same with this one that's behind it. Really like the effect that that gives to the overall landscape. Once all of the trees are in, we are ready to color them and add some leaves. So in the beginning, I want to go for some more pastel colors, and the slime block really helps with that. Of course, all of these trees need to be in blossom. It's a flower forest after all. Why aren't the trees in blossom in regular flower forest? I don't understand. Anyways, I'm going to be doing 3 different types of leaves on these trees. So one is slime, the other is jungle leaves, and then the last will be the glazed terracotta. And each of these trees will have different blossoms in them. I just love the way that this looks. I think it really fits well with the biome that we're in. Of course, the trunks are all different colors as well. Now that we've got our trees in place, it's time to focus a little bit more on our pond. So we're going with some cattails to mark the edges of the pond on the little beaches that we have here, and I think this adds a little bit of realism into our fantasy landscape. We're also going to be going with some lily pads. Now for the lily pads, I did a really simple design. It's kind of hard to get the lily pad shape correct, but once I got it, I kind of went with that and just pasted it around a few times, and I think it really helps to bring the pond to life. Now, we need to think about the story of this area. So, what creatures could possibly live in a flower forest? What about fairies? Wouldn't that be so magical to have fairies living in a flower forest? I think it would be. So let's build some flower fairy houses. I go with some quartz block to mark out this really over-detailed roof. Get some really crazy whimsical curves in there, and I really like the way that that looks with the pink roof. I think the roofs are what really make this fairy houses and really make them come to life, adding a lot of detail to the roofs, not so much along the walls. I think this balances it out quite nicely. I also enjoy the way that the white quartz outline on the roofs goes with the white terrain that we have here. It all just fits together so nicely, almost like a puzzle. Each of these houses are unique, and I like that about them. On this cliff over here, I wanted to have something a little larger, so I decided having a nice gathering area for the fairies would be a good fit. Of course, it gets a very similar roof design to all of the other houses, and I think it just fits in very nicely on the top there. Once we've got all of our houses in, it's time to start thinking about the smaller details. So we're going to start off with a lily here to get started on our flowers, and then we're going to be adding some details to these houses. So windows, doorways, a preliminary flower there, some chimneys, and very different designs on each of these houses, making it consistent but also unique to each house. I also think that it is a good idea to connect the houses together. Although fairies can probably fly, I think it adds some consistency to the houses, and really it just brings them all together, having some very simple paths connecting them. Nothing crazy, of course. Now we're going to begin on our flowers. So this flower here is inspired by a lilac tree or some lavender. I just used a line brush to create it. Then for the other one here, I'm doing a typical 5-point star flower here with some diamond blocks. And I really like getting to use blocks like diamond block that I don't use very often. And of course, I can't stay away from the prismarine, so we have some prismarine leaves on our pink flower here, and we're going to be pasting those around in our terrain. Now this is where I was a little torn about how I wanted to do this, because of course I want each of the flowers to be unique and original, but also realistically, in flowery meadows, when you look around, you see many different types of flowers, but you also see much of the same in groups. So some cliffs I did like this one, where I focus on original flowers, and then in some areas I focus on pasting around some more bigger detailed flowers. I think this works, especially with this dandelion here. I quite like the way that the dandelion turned out. It might be one of my favorites. You guys let me know in the comments down below which flower ends up being your favorite. Or maybe you have your own flower design that you would have done. Up at the top here I do a big lotus flower, and I start thinking that this one is so on the top, so almost central to the build, that maybe it is magical for the fairies. That could be kind of cool. Now I add some butterflies and bees to be buzzing around in this area. Rainbow, of course. There's no other way to do it. Only rainbow butterflies here. This was a lot of fun to build. I hope you guys like it. Here is the finished result. I loved getting to work with all of the different colors, and I think it came out so nice. If you guys were to build your own custom flower forest biome, what would you put in it? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, that's enough for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of this build. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!